Well, Jeff Lutz, there's no explaining this week in terms of the stock market, except it's a short week with nobody trading. I mean, what craziness. Nvidia and Tesla were chasing each other around about the same graph today, down five, down six, whatever, 3% down, and then back. Holy mackerel. Did you see anything else out there that I was missing that might have created this craziness?
No, I mean, we got a good PCE number this morning. I would say the Chicago Manufacturing Index, that was a little bit soft, but yeah, overall, pretty good. We had a good GDP metric. So everything else is pretty good. Jobless claims, like everything was pretty solid. I just think this is a low volume week. And for whatever reason, by the way, like these should be like these robots and these algos shouldn't be taking Thanksgiving off, but
Right.
for whatever reason, it looks like their masters are. So yeah, it's typically low volume, and so I wouldn't read too much into this week one way or another. If you had news tied to your company, your company or your stock may move, but in general, pretty low volume week.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. I think we'll probably have to wait till Monday to really know what the markets are trending right now. Tesla is having a great quarter in China. It looks like they could have a record all-time quarter in China, but the other Chinese manufacturers, not necessarily so much. NIO seems to be on life support. Several folks that follow NIO are starting to, put a clock on it. What do you mentioned some stuff on X today about their days to pay. What are you seeing in China that maybe other folks are not paying a close enough attention to?
Yeah, and I'm spending more time researching this, but just really briefly for now, uh, I'm always curious. Like I just hear about, I even saw Jeffrey's note today on Tesla, and they were talking about the whole EV industry next year, and they just like, China's, it's in great shape, it's on fire. I'm like, did this analyst start looking at some basic information about what's going on in inventory? Things are a bit opaque in China, but there's some of these metrics that are out there that if you run manufacturing or supply chain or you've run a company, you would look at some of these things and say, wow, what's happening? And I noticed the days payable outstanding ballooning. It's growing year on year. It's BYD, it's XPeng, it's NIO. And it's, you know, the US is typically around 60 days payable outstanding to their suppliers. And in China, it's a little bit higher. But Tesla in the US is around 60. Tesla in China is closer to 100. Tesla's actually brought that in over the last couple of years from 120, 110 to 100, closer to 100. But BYD, and I'll go through some numbers a couple days. Neo's close to 300 days. I mean, this is like 10 months of payables outstanding. And, BYD is not too far behind in the high 200s. And the more important thing is it's not getting better. There's 2021 data, there's 2022, and there's 2023. Those 3 years are in the books. And of course, we're creating 2024 right now. But in those last 3 years, their days payable outstanding has grown. So what that means is they're paying their suppliers later, which artificially inflates their cash position. And you see what's happened since 2022 and kind of this price war in China. And I think it's really taking a toll on these OEMs. And there
Because of
must be a very deep level of subsidization happening from the Chinese government. Because if left alone, there's no way that this is a viable business. And then conversely, I think that's one of the reasons they're fighting to get into Western Europe and they're fighting to get into the North and South America because they can get much better payment terms, even though, well, they would set up manufacturing locally too. So they can get much better payment terms and really start, increasing the health of the cash in their business. So I'm starting to see some things that don't look so good. They've never been really good from a gross margin perspective, although when BYD reports, it's a little bit opaque because they have a components business, they have a battery business,
right.
they have an auto business, and I don't necessarily see it split out. And they have hybrid vehicles and they have pure
That's
EVs. So I never get a really good split. Uh, but I just, again, I think this cash thing is kind of a bigger, this days payable is a bigger deal that's happening under the service.
So when you look at 100, even 100 days payable, I'm assuming that Tesla, with the cash reserves that they have, wouldn't be paying in 100 days unless their suppliers are providing them with 100-day terms. But 100-day terms, that's just crazy. I mean, I don't know how these raw material suppliers and components and parts manufacturers, even survive when they're only getting paid 100 days after shipment. But 300 days, now we're talking, or 250 days. Uh, I mean, I guess it's possible that these suppliers are offering those kind of terms, but if I have a customer who I'm offering 100-day terms and they're paying me in 250 days, I cut them off. I mean, there's not a chance I'm going to ship them anything.
Yeah, you cut them off, and if you're really offering 300-day term, then you should be charging them a lot
A lot.
for that. But they're not. So this is where this something something's not right. And I think this is one of the reasons also you're going to see a very visceral reaction from the CCP on these tariffs. I think it's going to be a different ball game than it was nicey 3, 4, 5 years ago. I like she likes me. We're trying to figure it out. No, I think when the bigger tariffs go on here, you're going to see. And I saw a post today too. I think I reposted it, and I'll talk more about it. But China they can engage in a very meaningful, nasty way on the tariff side and on the export side and on the import side, quite frankly, if we chose to go that way. So hopefully this is, a negotiating tactic trying to bring us to the brink, and then we'll figure something out. But there's some industries that the US needs to protect, or they'll literally fall on their face.
Right.
And there's some that we more want to kind of tweak and get under better control. And then there's some things that are being done for ulterior motives.
Right.
The one about Mexico and cleaning up the drug situation, that's not necessarily connected to competing industries. But back to automobiles, there's been this tension building of Mexico producing cars and these plants in Mexico for GM, Ford, and Stellantis, like just expanding over the last decade in size and scope. I just don't think a lot of people realize that about any, it changes and moves a little bit, but of roughly 1 in 3, Ford or GM or Stellantis you see on the road in the US were actually made in Mexico and some in Canada. They're not made in the US. The one in
Right.
three are not.
Right.
And but every Tesla you see in the US was on the road in the US was made here.
Right.
So anyway, there's a lot to unpack here. We have free trade agreements with, we have the NAFTA. There's a lot of things to unpack here, but this is going to be a very interesting time. Like I think your shows, Randy, are going to be very interesting as some of these things start to, and not that they're not interesting already. It's
Yeah,
just more
of
of
course.
this is going to add a whole new layer of analysis that's going to be needed. Like, what does this mean for Tesla?
Yeah, let's go back to BYD for a minute. Their free cash flow hasn't been great anyway. They've had some big negative free cash flow quarters. I mean, some of these other companies, the SAICs and whatnot, they do a meaningful number of vehicles, but they're nothing compared to BYD in terms of competition over there. If BYD's getting 250 days to pay and their free cash flow is already negative, that would suggest that they've inflated whatever they've been showing us in terms of free cash flow. So it should have been maybe negative all the time. And where are they getting the cash? Is maybe the CCP is providing them with unlimited amounts of loans to be able to underwrite that amount of negative cash?
Yeah, I don't know. When I look at the 2021 data, so it's, over 3 years ago now, they were all in the high 100s and Tesla was in the low 100s for days payable outstanding. And so China's already on a kind of a different paradigm. And then, but that it's done nothing but expand except for Li Auto. Um, by the way, Li Auto's founder is one of my former coworkers. I know him, and he's brilliant in supply chain. So I can see why they're actually the of the Chinese nationals, they stand out. They
Huh,
actually went from 181 days to 164 in 2023. They're actually on the way
improving.
down,
Mhm.
and everyone else, BYD went 2022 from 219 days to 275 days, days payable outstanding. So that's not a healthy business. Something is going on. Something's not right. And I think this is one of the reasons they're trying to crack the code and get out of China as quickly as possible, get into Western Europe, get into Central and South America, get into North America if they can, and get in there and get into a network where suppliers are being paid faster, and that whole transaction is happening, that whole cash conversion loop can be pulled in. Something is not right in China. So I'm trying to unpack this
Yeah, it'd be
and understand a little bit
interesting.
more. But even if the days themselves, you can say, well, they're doing this or that. That trend, that growth trend in days payable is a problem.
Yeah, the trend is a problem, and maybe one of the things to look at, of course, is how quickly are the dealers paying them. So if the
Yeah, we don't
dealers,
see that, by the way.
there's no way to find.
BYD has dealerships,
Yeah,
BYD has car lots. We don't see any of this information. We
I
just
see.
see a number of cars that they shipped. We don't know if their inventory goes up 50%, that goes down 10%. We don't even know any of this.
I see.
And so I think every time I see an earnings report or something that related to BYD and how many they ship, I really kind of furrow my eyebrow in terms of like, okay, there is obviously some real organic growth, but it's not clear. Like, are they paying their suppliers
Right. Yes.
and what's going on in channel inventory? It's just not clear.
Well, let's move over to Europe for just a minute. As long as we're talking about competitive businesses, it would appear that the German car makers, basically, which are the main car makers in Europe, but that they're in just getting in more and more trouble. I mean, it's just the numbers are devastating in terms of profits dropping, unit sales dropping. I mean, is this? I mean, it's not like Europe is showing great growth in terms of its economy either. So is this, the death knell of some of these companies?
Yeah, it's 10 and 15-year-old methods. I'm not saying there's not subtle improvements they're making, but it's 10 and 15-year-old methods in terms of development process, like how do they develop cars and what they farm out to sub-suppliers. And then it's 10 to 15-year-old, 20-year-old supply chains, very large in terms of span, very deep in terms of number of nodes. And it just, that worked at a point in time when the auto industry was closer to 80 million units a year. In the case of the US was at 21 million cars, I think in 2018. And that was it. That was the peak.
Peak. Yeah,
We're at 15 to 16 now.
right.
Where does all that capacity go? That capacity was built out. Somebody bought it.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, they're running into trouble because cars are lasting longer, and their approach to product development, their approach to sourcing, their approach to supply chain design has not kept up with what's about to come. And then they met this high interest rate environment, and they've been able to keep their transaction prices pretty high. So that's the one saving grace right now of the auto industry is that, people still have money to buy cars, but they're buying them less often. Cars are lasting longer,
yeah.
and the EV side of it is going to be quite and continue to be quite disruptive, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about version 13. Version 13 was promised for before Thanksgiving. It is still before Thanksgiving today. Do we get a Thanksgiving gift tomorrow?
It's possible. They're getting really good at just, obviously this may go out to a smaller group of people, today or tomorrow. But I think the point is when you're doing these kind of things that have never been done before, your schedule variation, you're going to have some variation. And I think if I'm Tesla and if I'm a Tesla investor or a supporter of the company, I'd rather them focus on the quality of the release and be 2 or 3 weeks late than, them trying to just get something out there and then all of a sudden somebody gets hurt or they just get really negative feedback. So I think Tesla has the right approach. I just think though, if this were conventional vehicle software, it should be a lot more predictable about when it comes out. But this is stuff that people just never have done before, and I think, and they're still adding, one of the golden rules in product development is to get your product, get your code or get your hardware to feature complete as soon as possible. So then you can focus on bug reduction. Well, they're still adding features.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, they got a few to go that
Yeah.
are all supposed to be on this release.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure that they'll all be available as soon as the version comes out. It might be that they're possible and they'll be released with updates shortly after. You noted on your X account that Grok 2 is, I forget what you actually said. I wrote down amazing. There are reports that a consumer-facing version of Grok is going to be coming out shortly. There's more commentary coming out about their payment system is almost ready to go. They just got a few states before they to approve them before they can do that. So, what are you thinking? What was so great about Grok 2?
I've been I'm using all the paid services. I have Perplexity. I've
Ah,
got ChatGPT. I'm paying that. Of course, I have Gemini Advanced. I have, um, and I'm just seeing a kind of a higher level of quality in
mhm.
the answers and the responses and in greater speed with Grok 2. So I'll be really excited if Grok 3 goes into some sort of beta testing soon. That's going to be using a lot of the new capacity brought online for XAI. And I'd love to test it, but I find it to be, very useful. And I do think you're going to start seeing some more transactions between XAI and Tesla. And I do think that, they're going to help each other more. So we'll see how that works. Whether that's, Teslas that turn into, inference and, training compute that's available offline, whether it's Tesla being able to leverage Grok in vehicles. Is it Grok helping solve real world AI and driving so that there's some sort of assist feature inside of the vehicle?
Mhm.
What I mean by that is like, let's say it's in a bit of a jam. Does it give you choices like,
Right.
hey, do you want to stop? Should we reverse out of this? And your ability to converse with the vehicle and actually help with controls. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about what Tesla and the team were doing. Sorry, what Elon and the team were doing with XAI and Grok. And I also think, and Mark Benioff's been all over this. I think the LLM AI that's being used right now, whether it's Microsoft Copilot and these agents,
Right.
I don't think it works very well.
Oh, wow.
And I know we're sitting here in version 12.6 5.6.3 isn't perfect either on Tesla.
Right. Right.
But I think if you were to measure this in tokens of work or some sort of metric in terms of like, based on how many different control outputs are given to the vehicle, like what percent of them are good and viable, I think you're going to get a much higher number on Tesla with
Mhm.
what they're doing with AI than you're going to do with like the performance of in the responses you're getting out of a Copilot and some of these other things that have been promised. So, and there's also a thing happening. It looks like the AI PCs aren't going so hot either.
Yeah.
So I just think this first wave of how LLMs will like become monetizable. I think it remains to be seen.
Is that why Nvidia's been struggling a bit in the stock market? I mean, because there's been this conversation's taking place all over the place. I'm not an expert in this area by any stretch of the imagination, but even I am seeing, commentator after commentator say there's a leveling off. They're not sure that they can get to where they need to get without another breakthrough. What do you think?
Yeah, there's some disagreement in terms of that. I've heard both of those. I don't think Nvidia actually has a problem in terms of demand. Remember, they sell hardware and
Right.
software, and it's not only the GPUs they're selling a lot of the other peripherals to kind of bring the whole data center together. So I think Nvidia's got demand for the next 5 to 6. When I say demand, demand greater than supply
Right.
through next year. So I don't think that's the problem. I think, yeah, I don't know what's happening with Nvidia this week, but I think it's kind of low volume. It's kind of, it's kind of have its 3 day rule. Maybe it's longer than 3 days from their earnings with the holiday week. But no, I'm excited about what's going to happen with Nvidia. But I think with these other ones, I think that maybe why Microsoft and some others may be stuck. Like, I don't think they've cracked the code here. I don't think AI PCs are, I just don't think it's there. And I don't, even Apple Intelligence it doesn't look that great right now in terms of like real world usefulness. So I think there's a long way. I actually think Tesla's almost jumped the shark here in terms of, I'm sitting in my vehicle now. Every time I get in my car, 90% of the time, I'm using Tesla AI to get from point A to point
Right.
B.
Right.
And it's very useful. It's very helpful. I will not buy a car without it. I will not get into a car and drive. I feel like I'm moving backwards if I have to get in my car and drive.
Sure.
So I think Tesla's really jumped ahead here, and just not a lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah. Brian Wong again has indicated that he thinks that with that additional set of 100 GPUs that XAI has purchased, he believes that Grok will move ahead of all of these guys in the first half of next year.
I think that's possible, and I think you're also hearing a lot of noise in the industry of yeah, people are are they going to get passed up here pretty quickly?
Yeah. All right. So speaking of the future of things, all Elon, he's spending an awful lot of time right now he's spending a lot of time on X, first of all. Holy mackerel. I think when he beat Diablo, he must have freed up a bunch of his time
Hmm.
because he is now all over the place. But one of the things that he's spending a lot of time talking about and has is drones and militarily, talking about drones as a military asset. Now he's added to that autonomous military vehicles, and he's also added to it next level rockets. So does Tesla get into drones and autonomous military vehicles, and SpaceX become a Defense Department supplier for factory built incredible rockets?
Yeah, SpaceX is a Defense Department supplier already,
I mean, I mean
and
on another level.
yeah. Well, and there's examples of when they release a consumer version of something, the military picking that up and then, asking Tesla for features to make it more, error prone to hacking. All of a sudden now, Starlink becomes Star Shield,
Right.
this massive government contract for, you know, satellite communications. So I think there will be more examples of this. I think it will be SpaceX, it will be Tesla, maybe XAI as well. And I do think that with Elon Musk companies, you're gonna have a private consumer sales channel, and you're gonna have a government defense sales channel. And the question is like, what do they ultimately get into? I think it's going to be things that they're more closely building today versus them getting into drones. Like, there's a company called Anduril that's kind of doing, they're kind of next generation Silicon Valley, different mindset than traditional defense contractors. So there's companies out there forming that are kind of Tesla. I wouldn't say Tesla like per se, but they're more of in that mold, a newer mold than the traditional defense contractor mode. But I think some of the products that Tesla makes could be retrofitted for the government. I've done this work too before too, in terms of the mobile phone industry,
Hmm.
and it is extremely, extremely high margins, which is actually part of the problem.
Yeah, I just have this sense because Elon has mentioned drones, mentioned them over and over and over again. I just, knowing again how the entrepreneurial, knowing how that entrepreneurial mind works, there's this shiny object situation where, sometimes that shiny object is just it just pulls on you until even though you're like, no, I shouldn't, or maybe that's not the best use of my time right now. It's like, no, I've got to pursue that shiny object because it's just so important or so fun, whatever the reason might be. But drones making literally, I can imagine, a gigafactory that would be able to produce, millions or tens of millions of drones that would make it. I mean, World War II. Some people talk about. I just was listening to somebody the other day about what were the reasons that the Western powers won World War II. I had always heard that it was because of our advantages in factory manufacturing. So to win the current race in terms of manufacturing products that would either stop future wars or win future wars, it would seem drones, according to Elon Musk, is the key.
Yeah, should be interesting. I think we also have a national security issue with in terms of, you know, where drones are made today in the world in volume,
Oh, yeah. That's
and
China's.
so I think there is something to go after. I just don't know if it's Tesla slash SpaceX or is it, Andrew who's already working on, larger military drones and, and do they have a better path to miniaturize it?
All right. Okay. Well, I was curious to get your take on that because
Yeah.
Larry and I talked about it last night, and I wouldn't be shocked. Let's put it that way. Massive amounts of oil and other mining products come from Mexico. Massive amounts of refined products go back to Mexico. So we've got what's her face? I wrote it down here because I haven't memorized it. Claudia Scheinenbaum says, "Oh, you can take your tariffs anyway." She's threatening to, come back at us with some kind of counter tariffs. As you pointed out in the beginning of the conversation, I doubt very much whether these are. In fact, Whole Mars said he thinks there's only a 25% chance that any of these tariffs with Mexico or Canada end up going through. I said it's zero chance. What do you think? Do you think this is all posturing and it's just a matter of trying to, one way or the other, get a new agreement with regard to immigration and fentanyl?
Yeah. I mean, how do you say no to what the US has requested? And it really puts the US on a moral high ground. Like, don't give me drugs and don't have, and make sure you've got a system in place that prevents mass illegal crossings from your country into mine. Like, what's the moral high ground that you can stand on top of that with? You can't. So I think the president or prime minister of Mexico had to respond the way she did. There's no other way to respond. It's not like, oh, thank you, sir. May I have another? You have to be defiant. There's 50 days between her and the next administration coming in. And my guess is over those 50 days, they'll do some negotiating back and forth and figure out how to get something, structured for day one. I just don't see it any other way. But there are some new industries. I think auto parts and full automobile assembly. I think that will be reassessed, Mexico or not. Um, I think we have to be really careful because we've created something in the US that's very self destructive with our auto industry, where we've decided to let unions run amok and dictate everything. Uh, and they didn't get everything, but they got a lot. And do I think people deserve a raise? Of course I do. We've had runaway, everything costs 20% more than it did 3 years ago. So of course people deserve a raise. The question is how large, how pervasive, and is it per performance? And why do you have stipulations around reducing automation? Why do you have stipulations about opening more facilities when you've got parking lots and record high inventory? So to me, like the union goals are misaligned with how do you have the best auto industry in the world and how do you have one that can actually survive? I think the two are misaligned. And I'm not blaming everything on unions. You've got management making poor decisions too. But I would watch in terms of these tariffs. The US has to get highly protectionist really quick on automobiles, or it's going to be game over in an accelerated fashion for some of these US automakers. It just is.
Well, it might be game over just because of their failure to be able to come up with compelling products at compelling prices. I'm going to agree with you 99%, well, 85% of the way. The one thing I think about the Mexico manufacturing, auto manufacturing business is that it's probably good for the United States to have a more viable partner or neighbor in Mexico, a more stronger economy down there, not only from the standpoint of keeping their people in that country as opposed to coming here, but just in general, having a strong economic partner next door is good, as opposed to a weak one, as opposed to one that is run by gangs of criminals.
Yeah, no, I think there's merit to that. So the question is that what is the end result to
Right.
your 3 million people you have in the U.S. auto industry? 3 million
Three
people.
Wow, that's as many as we have government employees. So, so the 3 million people, yeah. So, yeah, and so how? Again, that brings us back to square one because I'm not sure it's going to be Mexico that kills the U.S. Auto industry. I think it's going to be their own failures to produce a quality product. That comes back to the whole question of when did they wise up and call Elon?
Yeah, no, I think that's in the cards. I think automakers would be smart to partner with Elon because Elon is he it was already smart to partner with Tesla and Elon before because they were building a better product at a lower price point and he's enabling features and functionality whether it's the supercharging network or full self-driving that they just don't have. But now you add an element of is he's the closest person to the most powerful president in the world. So if you're a US auto OEM, it would behoove you to get in line early and get a deal done with Tesla, whether it's you name it. It could be motor inverter technology, it could be FSD, it could be a number of things of like instead of the government just giving handouts to these companies that have very low or negative ROI, what if the handout was in the form of a partnership with a company that knows how to do these things that could actually make the end company better. And, Tesla should be getting paid for what they're doing and they would. What if that was the incentive versus just, uh, helicoptering in $6.6 billion
To
to a
Rivian.
company that loses $33,000 for every car that they ship today?
Yeah, 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 the nonsense that's happening in this last 60 days. I don't know how much. Hopefully, there's a lot of that that can be reversed or at least modified after the Trump administration takes over. But it's crazy making to see these decisions that are happening. Well, I'll leave you on this last idea. I know that we'll probably be in like 100% agreement, but interesting to see on the international relations front. Hezbollah already at peace. We'll see how long it lasts, but at least there is an agreement. Um, the folks in Gaza saying, yeah, we probably have to come along. This then isolates Iran and creates and makes Iran look weak as they can possibly look. And then in the meanwhile, already having Trump's people over talking about Ukraine and Russia, trying to figure out how that's going to look. Um, uh, this, of course, is what any Trump supporter would be looking for as proof positive that this was the right way to go. How have you been feeling about as you've watched all this take place?
Yeah, these world events, everybody's got a position for what's happening and what's going to happen. And I think he's been very clear about what he wants and what he expects. And, the US is a gigantic bully pulpit. They've got a big stick. And I think, I love the fact that it's not, wait till day one. Well, there's certain things that he can't do until day one from an
Right.
executive order perspective. But in terms of setting expectations with global partners, and from a from a war perspective, saying this is what I expect on day one. You're either here with us or before. Like come
Yeah.
before is fine too. I just think the world is adjusting to what is about to happen, and it's better for you to get out in front of this stuff and be early versus trying to fight it tooth and nail all the way to the end. Because he's shown he's been pretty persistent. But yeah, I also think some of this stuff too is a little bit of posturing, and I think everybody shouldn't like over rotate on every single thing said. But I think there is going to be an expectation. This is going to be a change. There's going to be some significant things in this next 4 years. You have the Department of Government Efficiency. You know, there's a lot of credibility on the line here, and there's a serious problem that has to be solved. So I just think this is going to be maybe one of the most, four transformational years that we've had in a long time, maybe our lifetimes.
Yep, there's a huge amount of optimism out there. We'll see. We'll see whether all comes well. Even if a big portion of it comes true, I think we'll
It's
be
huge.
better off and happy about it. All right, Jeff, I'm going to let you go then. I am actually going to put this on pause, ladies and gentlemen, while I figure out. I don't even know if there is a pre-market today or not, but I'll figure that out. Thanks, Jeff. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your travels,
Yep.
and to all of you out there, I'll be back in a minute.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
I've gotten a couple of emails the last few days asking me what does a Cybertruck bottle opener actually look like. Well, usually it's sitting up here on the shelf right there by the books, but let me just show you. This is the camouflage version of the Cybertruck bottle opener. You can see about how big it is based on my hand, which is a small hand, about 9 inches from end to end. It's about the same thickness as the product itself, as the Cybertruck. Has the bottle open right there, has a nice, huge, mega magnet on the back so that it's easy, holds on to your refrigerator just great. Millions and millions of uses for these. You can take it with you, on camping, on your boat, on your plane, wherever you're going. And of course, wherever there's a refrigerator, that's the best place, but lots of other possibilities as well. Anyway, that's what that one looks like. Then you've got the stainless steel version. That's the stainless steel version right there. If that would be more like what you would be interested in. And it comes in this gorgeous gift box. Let me just show you this gift box. Here you go. It's kind of like one of those Apple gift boxes, it's really, really cool. And, you open it, it's got a magnetic latch on it here. And when you open it up, there you go. How good does that look as a gift for somebody? Oh my goodness. So all the information that we've been talking about for since last year, this time, there's $25 for one. Now you can go on Amazon and buy it. If you'd rather buy it on Amazon for $29, I think $29.95 even, or you can buy it from me. You send the money to paypal.me/Randy Kirk. $25 for one, $45 for two, $65 for three, $80 for four, $100 for five, etc., 20 times whatever it is that you're interested in buying. Now, if you're in a foreign country, you have to add money. What did we decide last year? I want to say an extra $25 for freight for Europe and for Canada, Mexico, etc. But if you're in the like Australia, New Zealand, Japan, all of that, you got to add a lot more than that. So if you're in one of those areas and you want to get one, would you just let me know how many you want? Let me find out what the freight will be, and I'll just charge you whatever that would be in terms of the same amount. Okay, that's it. Let me move on now. I wanted to let folks know what we're really talking about there in case you want to buy one for this Christmas or 5 or 20. We've gotten lots of orders for 5, 10, 15, 20. Last year, so many orders. I forget how many total, but it was a lot. I was pleasantly surprised how many we sold. Okay, so let me look at where we are on the various activities for today. Let's start at the top. We'll start with Tesla. Down $5.34 during regular trading. Right now, it is down another 27 cents. It's been up and down in the after hours when I've checked it earlier. We've got the Dow down 138, NASDAQ down 115, and the S&P down 22. Again, as we talked about earlier, I think this is going to be just one of those weeks, a toss-away week, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense why the markets were down today. Pretty much everything was in line in terms of expectations. So who knows what's going on there? Now, markets have run up a long way, including Tesla. So it's not shocking. And I've said a couple of times on X today, being at 333 right now, I don't think you were planning on Tesla being at 333 by Thanksgiving. I don't think anybody had that in their projection. Okay. If you did, let me know, but I don't think so. Okay. So I think we could just say, oh, As long as we're not looking for opportunities to buy more at a cheap price, this is a good deal. All right, let's go ahead and look at the rest of the Mag 7. Google's barely up. The rest were down. Nvidia ended up only down $1.58 after being down a lot more. I want to say on the order of 3% at one point, down about four or more dollars. And the Cathie Woods were basically mixed. Yeah, basically mixed, mostly up, but a few down. Okay, so there you go. That's what's happening on the percentages. You got the Dow down 0.31, NASDAQ down 0.6, and S&P down 0.38. All right, now let's go ahead and look at the bonds. And let's start with the 10-year was down during the regular hours because this does not include any pre-market. The 10-year was down 4.1 basis points, back down to 4.261. So 4.25 is probably going to be hard for it to break through. Let's see whether maybe that happens next week. We've got the 2-year at 4.231. As Larry pointed out last night, we're very close to breaking through to another inversion. Wouldn't that be weird? There you go. So let's go ahead to the oil market, which is in the pre-market is barely up 8 cents on Texas Intermediate, 15 on Brent. We're still nicely under $70 for Texas, 68.80. And over $4 higher, 72.96 for Brent. Natural gas, after a big run up, is down 0.41 in the pre-market at $3.19. Gold has trimmed a bit of the gains, which it had earlier today and I believe yesterday. So we're now at 26.36. I think we were at 26.66. How do I keep? That's an easy number to remember. We are down 0.13 in the pre-market right now. Silver is going the other way. It's 0.06 up at $30.13. It seems to be stuck in a range now, 30 to 34. Copper unchanged at this moment at $4.06.7. The dollar falls a little bit. Now in the pre-market, it's up against the yen and down against the euro. But overall, it's at very high levels right now. Bitcoin bounced back. Boy, did it bounce back. 5.23%, $4,774 up today, 96,021. Probably looking at another run at 100,000 next week. We'll see whether it breaks through. Pre-market right now, the Dow up 48 or 0.11%, S&P up 5 or 0.08%, and the NASDAQ up 1350 or just 0.06%. All right, well, there's where we are at the end of the day. I don't know if there's going to be a show. Put in notify, because if there is a show, I want you to watch it, but I haven't come up with an idea that I really am in love with at this exact moment, nor do I have someone to share something with. So not 100% sure. Now, there will be a show tomorrow morning. I'll just give you whatever news there is overnight on Tesla and the economic news. There might be a second show tomorrow, probably will be, but I'm not 100% sure of that either. So, these holidays. Maybe I'll talk about my drive back down to San Diego and back on FSD. For me, this will be my longest drive ever on FSD. So what else we got? And then on Friday, back to normal business. All the normal players on Friday. We've got CERN Basher coming, got Larry Goldberg. So it'll be, and CERN has been teasing me all week with what he's going to do. So we'll see what happens on Friday. Okay. I think, you want to go back and check out the video I did last night with who? With Brian White. That was on Tuesday, right? The week is getting a little weird. Brian White and I did a great video last night. Go check that one out. I'll put the card right there. Okay, remember now that I've shown you what these are, for those of you who wanted to see in detail, I've got them stuck together here. These are the guys, okay? Maybe you want one of each. Oh, by the way, please always tell me, do you want camouflage? Do you want stainless? And you can also get them custom done. Do you want some custom ones with your logo on it, with some special some special message on them. I mean, you can have all kinds of fun with your own artwork. I mean, who wouldn't want that? 6 is the best number for that because they end up costing you, I think it's $25 a piece when you buy 6. But the information is down below in the description, okay? That's all I got for you tonight. It's been great talking to you.